falls out, that's
Always like 8 to 5, it's gonna be so easy.
It's been too hot. Have you been traveling?
Ours looks like.
Quite a bit, but I was hoping they could get through it, they wouldn't say so. They approved for 2 more.
Oh, okay.
And so it means, you know, working for feds, things are gonna pick up a little bit. You have to do it. It's very
Isn't that last year?
They'll pick up again, but I'm not sure. Yeah. For somebody for my I know how that goes. Negotiable. Because after this 2 weeks, they're probably gonna do another CR and step CR. It's never gonna really, something really major happens. So, at least they're not gonna shut it down.
You're back and forth. Do you go other places or just?
I have on the East Coast and in Southern California.
She lives in It's coming out good.
You'll rest.
I just heard there's a whole bunch going on right now.
You're gonna be in trouble when you get
Can you see that?
That what?
Yes, I put about 1 minute. You said he was coming.
You can't see it, can you?
What? 2 minutes?
1 minute, and no, Aubrey's got it.
Yeah, he and his dad broke him down, so I'm going to give us some.
1 minute, that's fine. I'm not blocking. I'm not waiting on
And then,
you. Here.
have Matt, or I'll Matt go and then I'll just talk about what it's. Not maybe that, otherwise just, this is what it says. That's common, what's going on there? At some point,
yes.
Sarah's making an agenda, it might be good if you.
Yes, I would like
to. During the neighborhood updates and stuff, that'd be great.
You guys have command of presence. You notice how silent it is? Very good.
Crew, are you ready for us?
I am.
All right, well, we will bring the Ward 4 meeting to session, and we appreciate you coming. And my name is Sarah Lewis. I'm one of the Ward 4, I guess, Position 2 Ward 4 City Council member. And
I'm Rhonda Adams, Position 1.
And so we're glad to have you tonight. I think I'll go around and have you introduce yourself, and then Matt Mihailovich is going to talk to us give us an update on the trail system, and then we can kind of help each other. But I'm going to share some about some upcoming amendments to the pedicab ordinance that will be discussed at the council that I want you to know about. That there were questions about it, so I'm going to share with you some of that. It won't be heard for a few more weeks yet, but I'll share some of that. And then I'll have you ask questions or give neighborhood updates, and we'll go from there. Okay? All right, so Bill, you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Bill Muller, resident of Ward 4 and a charter member of this
Yeah, that's right.
Monday
So
night
glad.
meeting.
Yes, thank you. Good.
And I'm J.P. Peters, Ward 4, Clever Creek Edition, Clever Creek 2.
Tim Crane, University Heights.
We can go back in the back.
I'm Brian Waters, I'm with the police department. Just to help out if you can.
Larry Agus, Cross Keys.
Laverne Cooper, Ward
Keith.
4.
Okay.
Keith Cooper.
Matt Mihailovich, Trails Coordinator for the city, Fayetteville.
Steve Milligan.
Maurice Rankin, Ward 4.
Great. I'm Jim, this is my wife Naomi, Jim Lawler, and I'm at Clever Creek 4.
Charles Taunton, Crystal Springs 2.
Okay.
Steve Smith, Crystal Springs 2.
All right. Read everybody, and then someone came in.
Who are you? Travis Foder with Fire Department.
Travis, thanks for coming. Jim?
Jim Bemis, Emeritus,
There you go.
And I'm doing it from Benton County, and this year, every month.
That's right. Well, but you're also still active with some of the city.
This is, we'll hopefully get some cat stuff going
Yeah.
up there.
Well, it's not Rose City, but yeah, the cat. So glad you're here. Thank you, and thanks for coming. So Matt, would you like to share with us about trail system updates and?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Again, my name's Matt Mahalovich. I'm the Trails Coordinator for the City of Fayetteville, and I've been at it for about 5 years now, trying to build a whole network of trails throughout the city. I've got our master plan to kind of start off with. You guys can come in, or I can set this out, but we've got 18 miles right now of paved trail, actually 18.45 miles of paved multi-use trail, 12 feet wide. The master plan calls for 100 miles total, so probably some of you are familiar with in your ward, the Claver Creek Trail, the first section of that one, and it's going to get longer, and some along the interstate, and then but our big trail is Skull Creek Trail, actually a combination of Frisco Trail, Skull Creek Trail.
So you can point it?
Sure.
Okay.
And this runs up the center of town, connecting now. We had one section that was about a little over half a mile long that we finished up in October near Dixon Street, which provided the last little connection between the Frisco Trail that's by the library, connecting the part up north by Wilson Park and on up. So we now have a 7.6 mile one-way continuous trail from MLK or 6th Street up to Old Missouri Road, with a connection also to Lake Fayetteville. So really starting to get a network built, but more of a north-south. And so we've heard from citizens that, well, now we need to go east-west. So that's kind of what we're working on now. Currently we're working on a trail on the south part of the University of Arkansas. We got a grant from the State Highway Department, and we're also partnering with the university on that project. That's kind of along Center Street. It's called Oak Ridge Trail, and it's a half-mile extension from Frisco Trail heading west. It's going to go, for now, this phase ends at Garland. It's actually a piece of Garland that kind of comes down the hill from Yoakum Hall. So that's where that phase will end. Eventually, the university wants to continue that on around toward Maple Street and around by the Razorback Stadium. So.
Is that the section of trail? I think that's the section that was leveraged as in kind for a grant. Is that the part that helped us get a $500,000 grant for something else?
Oh, well.
Was that? I know that we did that. It may not have been that section.
This was a $116,000 grant.
Oh, okay, that was a different one.
Through the Recreational Trails Program.
Okay.
Who's providing the grant?
It's the Highway Department, State Highway Department, through federal funds. There's a Recreational Trails Program from the federal, and then that passes down to the State Highway Department. I think it's about a little over $1 million that they spread out throughout the state. So we certainly got a good chunk of it there on that last round. So we were real happy with that. With the $116,000, and then the university, we're splitting the cost above that, so just half and half. So we get a good trail for a good price on this one. But yeah, we're hoping to have that finished by April. The weather really hasn't been helping us very much in getting that finished, but we're getting there. We feel like we can just get some concrete down. This week's supposed to be good. We'll get it finished up. So then after that, we're going to work on a trail that's going to go across the university's experimental farm from Skull Creek Trail heading west to go under the Porter Road exit of 540, or Porter Road underpass. There on the west side of the underpass. There's a trail there. It's a 2.3 mile trail that we're really excited about getting geared up to build. It's also going to include a tunnel to safely cross underneath Garland, because Garland Avenue 112, as you know, is busy, and it's planned to be widened. Some sections of it, not right where we're going under, but eventually. So we didn't feel like the flashing lights and the raised crossing would be really sufficient enough at that location. So we wanted to do a tunnel, and this is going to be an opportunity to do a new tunnel, and it'll be dry inside because we're going to be putting it in new, and instead of using an older tunnel that was built for drainage, like we've done in the other areas.
Where will it cross?
Do you know where the Pauline Whitaker Arena is, horse arena? It'd be right in front of that
Okay.
building. That's actually called Knapp Street, and then it's kind of that northern street of the park, Aubrey Park,
Right.
little triangular
Sure.
park. So it'll come through that park and then go under right there, and it'll just ramp down about 5% slope with walls that'll kind of get taller as you go down and then through the tunnel. It'll have lights in the tunnel, and then you'll just ramp back out. So, actually, the university is kind of excited to have the tunnel for people to cross using the arena too, because when they have big events, they can park over at the park side and people can safely get under the road there.
What's it look like? Go ahead, I'll let you answer.
What can we do to help expedite the completion of the Claver Creek Trail? Because we've had that little spot that's, looks like it's about like this, you know. And it's been that way for years and years. So where is it on the schedule as far as completion?
Yeah, it's fairly high. We want to get it connected into the whole system, so we have still a big gap to get that piece built. We did apply for a Safe Routes to School grant to connect from Rupel Road over to Holcomb Elementary School. Unfortunately, we were not awarded that grant.
So there's not any other monies you can move around?
Yeah, depending, I mean, eventually, hopefully, we can get to it. And again, there's been just some high priorities to connect, the people, at least to get to Skull Creek Trail and I guess some of these more center areas. One thing that'll help it is the new Van Ash extension. Whenever they build that, the trail's gonna be built with that. So we'll have it extended from Skull Creek over to, I guess, Garland, where it takes its turn. So then they're still just getting across that Park West, I think, property, or that big property that.
Well, don't forget
And they
about
get
us,
over it.
because
Yeah.
we've been asking for this for years and years.
Sure.
And it looks like that there's a lot of consideration taken in other areas, and not that that's a bad thing, but, we're part of the city as well out there, and we're anxious to get that
And
finished.
it's
So
a
we
highly
can-
used trail. I mean, people
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
really
Yeah.
like it, and so we certainly want to extend it.
Both
Absolutely.
feet.
Yeah, both
Yeah.
feet.
I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understood it, that was intended to be connected as the developments went in, and then the developments have slowed. And that's been part of the difficulty, is that it was going to be part of, as the development went in, that would be part of the planned design of the development, but those haven't come to pass because the developments haven't gone in.
All the housing has been filled in between Claver Creek and all the way over to Razorback Golf Course.
Golf course.
Right.
That's where
Yeah.
a little holdup is.
Mhm.
Okay,
But other than that,
At least that next
we're all
piece.
sold out.
okay.
Mhm. But yeah,
So, yeah.
from that Park West development property, we don't have easements through there.
I think I guess that's what I was.
Golf course,
But-
but yeah.
What's it look like on the other, so when you tunnel under 540, do folks hook into it? What's it look like on the other side of 540?
Yeah, 540 Mount Comfort Road is almost finished, and it'll have bike lanes on it. It has good 5-foot sidewalks on both sides. And so our plan is that the bike lanes will kind of funnel right before the highway. You'll have a crossing with a light, and then you'll get to the trail there.
Okay,
And also in the future, the Shiloh Trail, which is by Sam's Club, would come down and hook in, and then the Hamstring Creek Trail, which is built around Pine Valley subdivision, it would also be hooked in, and eventually Hamstring Creek Trail is going to be a good connection out to the west too. So kind of be a point where it'll all tie together to go under. Kind of the pinch point is the interstate, and so we're looking at places we can go under it.
okay.
Porter Road is a good one to go under. Weddington's is not a good option right now, unfortunately, and we just don't have that many other ones. So it kind of would funnel a lot of things there, but really immediately we'll have the bike lanes and the sidewalks, so there's going to be a really good connection there just to get on into town.
So what, I guess starting in the summer and the fall and looking at the budgeting is the time when that can be, hey, where can, if you're wanting to move, like looking at moving funds around, it is a good time to be contacting your council person about that type of thing. And I don't know that, that's a good time to do it. I don't know what that would look like exactly, but that would be when to communicate it. I guess we'll start meeting in September, October. With this administration, they've had us meet earlier into the early fall. But the other part is that, keep asking, keep bringing it up, because I agree that we want to get those connections east-west, and so people can be using those.
Yeah.
But not just the trails, but also the design of a road. So in overlays, this can be incorporated. Terry Goley came last time to the Ward 4 meeting and talked about the overlay planning. Sidewalk plans, those can be connected into the trail system.
Yeah, and we have a committee called the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and they look at, based on requests, where we go next. So they really help define that, because we have a set budget of each year, hopefully, as it continues, sales tax revenue and things. And then we prioritize. Most of the time we prioritize based on population density and how much we're connecting with people and businesses. That's always been kind of our goal, and so you can kind of see how Skull Creek came about. I mean, it's right down the center of town and really the highest impact, but we certainly want to continue to expand out.
So could individuals get involved on that committee as openings come up then, or?
Yeah, as openings
just
come up,
citizens?
and also any time we meet,
You
we
can
meet
just come to those
quarterly.
meetings.
Yeah,
It's
they're
public
just public
meeting.
meetings.
Yeah.
And just letting us know, because like this trail that we're working on now, we heard from people that they want to be connected. Past 540, it was really hard to get on into town, and so that is a response from what we heard. So that's certainly what we'll do. And if we hear Claver Creek, which I've heard a lot too already, I know. It's just, we also have Gully Park, for instance, and we have a trail planned along Neocoska Creek to connect Gully Park around a Mud Creek Trail, which pretty dense neighborhoods in there too. So I mean, it's just, we kind of have to try to fit it all in the trails, which is great that people want them so much. So.
Is the Lake Fayetteville Trail, is it underway right now, where the pavement ends and the dirt begins?
That's another one we've got to get now.
No, okay.
It's not under construction. We have 1 mile left to complete the loop,
Okay,
the
good.
paved loop, the trail around Lake Fayetteville. We hoped, that was actually scheduled after this U of A, what we're calling the U of A Farm, Experimental Farm Trail, so that was next. And we applied for another grant, the same grant that we got for Oak Ridge Trail. And we're waiting to hear on that grant. We're supposed to hear this May. So if we get the grant, that would accelerate that project. It always helps if you have a grant, and it can really help accelerate the construction, because we know we've got to spend that grant funded and get that done. So I was really hoping that Safe Routes to School grant would have come through, and then we'd be like, okay, well, we've got to get that grant money spent. We got to go work on that one. The good thing we have going, especially from Rupel to Holcomb, is that that's all city-owned land already, so we don't need any easements. And a lot of the grant applications require that you already own the property, because they don't want to wait on, we're waiting to try to get the easement acquired or whatever. And so that kind of brings it to the top of the list as a place where we can go and apply for grants.
If people find grants, can they send them your way? Some
Yeah,
people,
they can.
in your career you may come across grants.
There's other options,
Send them to us, or we'll forward them on.
Yeah, I mean, we're always interested. We pretty much have a good feel for the main ones for trails, that Safe Routes to School. Transportation enhancement funding is a big one that's coming forward. And then this recreational trails program. There's some that are, maybe $1,000 and things like that. It just really doesn't get us where we need to be on we need something more in the 100,000 range to.
Trail through the UA farm, like on the east side of Pauline Whitaker, does it follow the perimeter of the farm? It doesn't go straight across it, does it?
No, it does not go straight across it.
There'd be a lot of tractor traffic there.
Yeah, there were certainly some concerns, and we met with the farm administrators.
Von Skinner, is that who?
Von Skinner, yeah. Do you know him? Yeah,
very well.
He's really great to work with.
Yeah.
So he's helped kind of here's where we do this, and we need to kind of stay away from that.
And do a lot of students out there with big equipment. You don't want that.
Yeah, so we ended up kind of going along the south, and I actually have a plan here of the whole thing that I could roll out, but if you want to see more
Something to pass
detail.
around, or?
Sure.
And that, I think you said that there'll be some fencing
kinda long.
along that trail too, to keep people off the farms, right?
Yeah.
You are to, don't,
There's already fencing on where it'll be, and we may there's moving some fencing around, but the way it comes along the south, it's actually not on the farm, it'll be just south of it, near Skull Creek Trail. There's a road right away there, actually, just right on the south, and then it goes up through that park, the Ag-Rite Park, which that wouldn't have fencing, that through that since it's a park. And then along that Knapp Street, which runs north of the, Pauline Whitaker Arena, there's already fencing there.
hold it up.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if it'll really read,
Hogging
but,
it there.
um,
We were gonna pass
maybe
around
if you
the
can hold
day.
that corner, I can maybe point, but. So we have the interstate here. This is the Porter Road underpass here, so, the trail does come up a little bit here, and then here's the Pauline Whitaker Arena. And so this is Garland, right here. The tunnels right here, and so the trail follows right along this old road here, and then drops down to come here. And then again drops down here, it actually drops a little bit below and then comes up. And then right where Sarah has her finger is where we meet the Skull Creek Trail tie-in. So that's kind of and all of it would be 12 feet wide, mostly asphalt trail.
Now, is this the section where I can't see it from here very well, is this where the fairground piece is too?
Yeah,
Where
this is
that?
fairground.
I think you all are to be commended for the cooperative way you worked with the university on that, and I don't know how many of you heard, all of that discussion, but they had to work together to agree to use a piece of the road
Yeah,
that
which
is
runs,
used during the fair only.
there's a little road right
Show
here,
us
just a little
that,
gravel
yeah.
road that comes down to Porter. And it's gated off, so you can't drive on it, but just during 3 days during the fair. And so we thought, well, gosh, it's barely used. If we could put the trail right on this gravel road, it's already nice and built. It would save a lot of money. Plus, the university didn't really want us expanding anymore into their research and technology, research fields. So that's already a road there, and so we've worked it out. We did have to end up changing the city ordinance, which strictly does not allow vehicles on the trails, which is what we want, but in this situation, we've amended it just a little bit to say that it's allowed for 3 days of the year for the annual fair. And we went ahead and made the trail, we're going to make the trail 16 feet wide there instead of 12, just for those days if there was a car and a bike or pedestrian, there's a little bit more room there for everyone to share. But it's going to end up saving a lot of money.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Artist Fair and all the activity on the trail last year. Can you give us any update about what to expect for this year?
Yeah, hopefully no thunderstorms like last year. But yeah, it was great. I mean, that's at Lake Fayetteville.
Can we pass that down?
Yeah, sorry, it's kind of long to fit it all on there. So. But yeah, you might know more, but that was a great event where the trail system at Lake Fayetteville was used as people went along and kind of different events along the way. And there was a solar power, not solar, but the powered for my bicycle to run the musical equipment. So it's really neat. I think they're going to do that. They call it the power bar.
So do you have any idea what's planned for this year?
No, I don't have any real specific details yet.
I just got an email because they were talking about it, so I just wondered.
Yeah, I got the date on my calendar. I think they're going to try to do to bring this bar that people ride their bikes on to haul it from the Walton Arts Center up along Skull Creek Trail up to Fayetteville and have kind of a ride up there to help, as people would help bring it up there. So that's one idea.
Now, Matt, do you or anyone else track the usage of the trails?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We actually have 2 counters they're a box. They use an infrared beam that goes out, and they're always counting. There are 2 out there all the time. We've had days on Skull Creek Trail that have been 3,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you have any feeling for the number of users of the trail who are using it for like I would, to take a walk, and others who have destinations and are going somewhere on the trail.
Yeah, that's a little harder to
It would be
differentiate.
more
Our
difficult
camera's
to
not that
measure.
sophisticated
You have a gut
to
feel
ask where
for
they're
it?
going. I look at people, if they have their backpack on and carrying groceries, and I mean, you certainly see that. I don't know if maybe, I think it's still more people are using it like you're using it for walking and recreation and exercise than actually alternative transportation, but I think it's pretty close depending on the day, because it's probably pretty close to
It might be a good
50-50.
graduate honors college thesis or something
Wow.
to do a
Hey,
public
there's an
survey.
idea.
Yeah. I mean, it would take, asking, where are you going? Or are you using this for recreation, or are you using it for transportation? Our goal with the plan and everything has always been a transportation mindset, and that's why we call it the Fayetteville Alternative Transportation. Because we feel like if you can accomplish a true transportation route, then the recreation side, it just kind of comes along with it. I mean, it's going to be a superior recreation facility as well.
It's 2 miles from my house to Dixon Street,
Okay.
at the restaurant where we normally eat. And
Yeah.
we walk across the university
Oh.
and using city streets to get there. Now, if there were a trail, we'd prefer that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there
And
will
I'm
be.
not asking for a trail.
Oh.
I'm just saying that I'm one of those people who currently use the system for recreation, who would use it for destination travel if it went where I wanted to go.
Yeah, to go to the restaurant.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the big goal there, is to have that option, as I say. It may not be for everybody. We're not trying to make people not drive their cars anymore, but just to provide a safe option to get around town without all the.
But you're not
gas
making me
prices.
not drive my car, that's
Yeah.
what's making me
Well, you
not
believe
drive
it.
my car.
There's been some people that think there's some kind of agenda to make people not be able to drive their cars anymore. It's almost that.
Are you getting reports on safety on the trails? Are they safe? Are we having, yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I thought.
very
I'm hearing
safe.
that, yeah. Not
Very
having any
safe.
problems out there.
No, not to speak of anything, really, our newest trail down by Dixon Street, the department manager, there's a little bit of people, drinking and walking home late at night from the Dixon Street, so we have a little bit different situation there that we've got to watch for, just to keep from any vandalism and things, but that's usually like at 3 in the morning and things, when the bar is closed.
That's the raccoons.
Yeah.
And that's why they get hit every time they cross the road.
The trail trekkers,
Yeah.
that reminds me of that, where is that program?
That's
I know
still
that they're-
ongoing. We've had some great volunteers that have done trail trekkers. It's a volunteer program where people that were using the trail a lot anyway become a trail trekker, and they're trained at the whole system to answer questions if people are using the trail and like, well, how do I get to here? Where's the restroom or whatever, and then also trained to help out with like a bike tire if it's flat, or if there's problems there to help people, and also reporting any kind of problems on the trail. If there's a tree down or a light fixture out or any of those things, we get a direct contact about those issues. So it's been a really good program. The trail trekkers wear a bright orange vest with it says Trail Trekker on the back, so it's pretty cool.
And you can sign up to do that as a.
Yeah, with the Parks Department and
Okay.
online on Access Fayetteville. There's a way to sign up, and yeah, it's been good. The other program that we have as volunteer-based is Adopt a Trail, and that has been really successful. Groups, individuals can adopt any sections of the trails that they want, and they are required to clean up 3 times a year to go and pick up, and the parks or the city provides gloves and they use old mulch bags, the bags that the mulch is in to put the trash in, and then can just leave it along the trail, and then someone will drive down and pick everything up. We do include the creek with that, so it's been a really tremendous program to keep the trails clean and our creeks clean. Skull Creek is much cleaner than it's ever been, I think, in the history of Fayetteville, almost. So they have 2 great programs that you can volunteer if you're interested, or organizations. We have.
You have time for one more question?
Okay, sure. Who is it?
offering, I was offering it.
Oh, I didn't see the
I was like,
answer.
Aubrey?
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask two small questions. First one, if someone is riding a motorized vehicle on the trails, and particularly where the sides are delicate, wet land and so forth, and he's letting you know, a four-wheel drive truck on there and off of it and stuff, in the snow or when it's wet, who do you call?
Right there.
It's not really a 911.
No, just
Non-emergency.
Call the non-emergency number. We will get an occasional call. Usually it's a small motorcycle or mopeds. It's probably more common and fairly rare that somebody gets a vehicle. Most of the trailheads all have bollards at the beginning of it to help prevent that.
The bollards, yeah.
The
The red posts.
So it's fairly rare on it, but don't hesitate to call us. We will respond. And we can get out there to check it, so.
Right. So that's one thing, and some places there's not a sign, and then some of them know how to get around it anyway. But the other thing is with we hope to see a riparian zone ordinance passed tomorrow night, and I think that you have emphasized, or Karen's emphasized, that the trails would be built to best management practices if they continue to be built near the trails.
That's correct. The best management manual is part of that.
Right. So that's been very big in my mind for several years, because you had to use that land close to the streets.
Yeah, we're going to get in places where, especially in urban situations, where there's just not any other option to put the trail in. And we don't want to just say, oh, we can't put a trail there, and so we wanted to do the best possible stewards of the environment in the creek. And in many cases, we're actually repairing years of erosion, that have happened on the creek, not caused by the trail or anything else, just from other development. And so we'll go in there at that time and repair that and fix it, according to the manual. Yeah.
Right.
So it's good to have that tool now.
Well, I congratulate you on this tunneling over to the other side of the freeway. You know, some of the people that use that already without the trail, they ride a bus or walk all the way out Porter Road and then cross in that dangerous place there.
Where it
walk to Wilson Spring to birdwatch.
Oh.
So
So it's maybe you.
Is
Is that you? Or,
yeah, Mike Milano wants to give me a walk from his house.
oh, my God, yeah, sure. Yeah, you'll have no excuse once that trail's there.
Yeah.
Well, before we let Matt go too far tonight, I want to talk about an ordinance amendment that would come up. It's related to the trails, and you'll figure that out as I keep talking, but it's the pedicab ordinance amendments. And one of the amendments would be so currently pedicabs are not allowed on the trails anywhere. And this ordinance amendment would allow pedicabs to travel the what they call the backbone of the trail system, which would be the Skull Creek, Mud Creek, and the Frisco Trail, and then other parts of the trail system with administrative approval upon a request by the pedicab company. So that's the part that's related to the trails. And did I describe it pretty well?
Yeah.
He's mostly he's on the staff side of things. This is going to be presented by Matthew Petty, is sponsoring this, and I think it's supposed to come before council on March 15th. And another part of that, so that's the part related to trails. Another part of it is that they would like to allow, so currently pedicabs cannot travel on roads that are 35 miles per hour or higher for safety reasons. And what they would like to do, and this would allow them, is to, with administrative approval, travel on, for example, Razorback Road, which is 35 miles per hour, during games, during Razorback game, during a basketball game or a football game. But they would have to get the route approved, and it would by the transportation director. And they've been working with the police department on and the transportation department on forming the language. And then the next part is they would like to allow for advertising on the back side of the pedicab And that has to be an amendment because it affects the sign ordinance. And so, I'm telling you about it, I need to read it more closely before I have much of an opinion, but, and I'm not sure, I'm on the ordinance review committee and they brought this forward, so those are the three components and the amendments that would be made to the existing pedicab ordinance, and that will be heard on March 15th.
Are these three separate amendments?
There would be three separate amendments to the pedicab ordinance, so an ordinance is kind of like a chapter within the city code.
But they would be voted on individually? Okay.
I think, unless they're composed as, if someone makes a motion to pass all three, you can do that, but usually each one is addressed separately.
Thank you.
It'll be very good to hear from you all on this. There's a Ward 4 resident who is a law librarian, and she had some time at the circulation desk or reference desk recently and pulled some ordinances from other cities. So we have some things to look at, I think all of us, when we think about how we want to go on this. Some cities have tried it and have decided not to do it because of traffic on the trails and the dangers that certainly exist when you put a vehicle of that size. And other cities have had good success with it because people like using the trails for alternate transportation, and it's been successful. So I think we have a lot to look at here, and I have a big folder full of the ordinances from a lot of similar cities. Since we don't know how many people are using the trail for what purpose, and we don't have a good way of knowing that short of a thesis, I guess, it may be something that we have to look at and then change. We might decide to try it and then decide it didn't work. So I don't know. I think there's a lot to be learned and a lot to be discussed here. And I've had a few emails on this subject already, mostly from people who are concerned about the safety of children and walkers and people whose reactions may not be very fast. So you all please look and read and listen and let us hear from you. I'd like to get all the input I could possibly get on this before I am asked to vote.
And I would like to, there's no way these would definitely be considered separately, without a doubt.
A suggestion on that, it all looks fine on a map, but when you get on the ground, it's different. Might get the pedicab to come out, get some video, see how they interact, is there enough room for a bicycle to pass without running into somebody else,
And there is the option to say, and actually the reason this has come back to the ordinance review is that when the pedicab ordinance was adopted, ordinance review committee requested that there be a 60-day review to see what the safety was in the streets and to revisit it. And apparently it's been fine as far as safety on the roads and so on. The pedicab companies are requesting the ability to expand their reach, and so they can improve their business. And so that we can build, that type of thing is something you can build in and say we want this to be revisited in a certain amount of.
Maps are only human made. I can't tell you how many times I've been out in the middle of nowhere and the map was wrong.
And I've got examples of ordinances that are 1 or 2 pages long and some that go on for 15 or 20 pages. So I can just see a world of opportunity here to get ours just right.
Well, I would make one suggestion when it comes time to review this, that when you're going against a speed limit, for example, think against the actual speed that vehicles travel on those streets, not the posted limit.
That's a good point.
So don't compare how fast a pedicab can go with the fact that the speed limit is posted at 25. Consider how fast traffic is actually moving on that street.
And I think that it goes both ways. Like, I think that's why they're saying, hey, we could do it during game days. And this was brought up at ordinance review saying maybe before the game it goes really slow. And so maybe that's a possibility because after the game people are hitting it hard to get out of there. So maybe that's not a good time to allow it because it would be more dangerous. So these are things that it's a good point to bring up and things that need to be looked at. The thing I will say that the part about advertising concerns me because of and that's why it's separate, is because it does affect the Fayetteville sign ordinance, which is, it's essentially, it's a unique situation with our sign ordinance, and the more you whittle away at it, basically, the more you chip away at it by allowing what is called off-site signs, makes it more possible for you to lose the entire sign ordinance. And because the terminology off-site signs is the reason we don't have big billboards all over, because it's not, those are off-site signs. So this is something that's why it's the advertising part has to be an amendment, because we have a sign ordinance that has aesthetic value.
This relates to the conversation we had about signage on the trails.
Yes.
If we have restrictions on what signs can be placed on the trails, we need the same kind of restrictions on a vehicle that's permitted to go on the trail.
Right, so these are the kinds of things that you have to think about.
Are there size restrictions for pedaled vehicles on these trails?
The pedicabs are specific width.
About 50 inches, I believe.
Yeah. And,
What about length?
oh, that's a good question.
I have a four-wheel pedal car, four little bicycle wheels on a frame. I'm sure I meet the 50 inches wide, but I'm not so sure, well, it's 6 or 7 feet long.
But it's not motorized. Is it motorized?
No.
No.
I think you'd be allowed right now, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, the ordinance says no motorized vehicles. Doesn't
Yeah.
really get into that. It
This
doesn't
is-
allow golf carts specifically. But electrically assisted wheelchairs, electrically assisted bikes are allowed, so, and then gas powered. But yeah, I've seen Trey Marley has one like that, where you can sit 2 people side by side and pedal.
Not on mine.
Okay.
Mine's a one person.
Did you build it?
It sits 1 person.
Did you build it?
I'm sorry?
Did you build it?
No,
No.
it's a Rhodes, R-H-O-D-E-S
Oh, okay.
car.
Oh, okay.
I bought it at a charity auction.
Cool.
I'd like to see it. Sounds good, all right.
If they ever get it running, maybe you'll see one
See,
on your trail.
right. And those are permitted on the trail. This is mostly focused on the fact that this would be heavier traffic of these vehicles carrying people. That's a good question about, I mean, you would be able to take that on the trail, right? So, question is, the pedicabs right now, can you address this, Brian?
Right now, what you have would still be considered a motorcycle. As different as it may be from a typical bicycle, I don't see anything statutorily to be any different than any other bike, whether it be seated or vertical or mountain or road or whatever. Still just a bicycle, whereas the pedicab ordinance specifically is an ordinance in relation to commercial business.
Okay.
Therein lies the difference between, you could have a tandem bike, but if you're not for sale, if you're not running a business, carrying people, then the pedicab ordinance is not, that's what it's talking about. So as far as your bike on the trail, it shouldn't be an issue.
And carrying my granddaughter in the basket behind me doesn't.
Unless you're charging.
You're right. Unless there's.
You gotta have one of those special chairs that,
Right.
you know, the boosters and all
Yeah.
that. Helmets.
Seat belts, the whole thing.
That's right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, what questions or neighborhood updates, or JP, you had mentioned you might have something about neighborhood update, or?
Yes, at Combat, I do have another issue I'd like to bring up
Okay.
before I talk about it.
Go ahead.
Good. We talked about our trails and so forth, but I noticed on Mount Comfort Road, we've got the road construction and so forth, but I've noticed particularly the last month, there is a major issue that's continuing growing with litter on the side of the road, especially when you get to Ribble Road as you're going to Bridgeport. On the side of the road, there is just all kinds of trash that is being, thrown there. And I wonder, and I should have done some research before I came, but I didn't have time to do that. I'm sure that we have some litter laws, and But I was wondering if at the least, could we not have a sign, not that that's gonna solve the problem, but a fine for littering or something of that nature posted near that area? Because, like I said, I've been noticing it here recently, and I don't know if that's gonna be a continuing thing or not, but, there's quite a lot of debris that's being thrown there, so.
It's a similar situation to along Cleveland with the butts, the smoking cigarette butts, lots of litter. Can you address that as far as the options related to
Absolutely.
littering?
Absolutely. We've got both state and local laws covering the littering, so it's not a problem on the enforcement end, other than the difficulty in identifying the individuals that are doing it. Some of it, we would need to look at what kind of trash. Is this normal passenger car trash? I mean, things going out the windows, you think? Okay, all right. Those obviously are the most difficult. When we have illegal dumping or people hauling materials and they're beginning to lose them, those are a little easier to track down so that we can try to correct the issue. It's harder when it's just car by car. We put it down for exit patrol. I'll take care of that. Getting guys out there working that stretch of road, watching for littering, but it is difficult to enforce. Obviously, people try not to do it when we're there because they know that.
Right.
And there is the 800 number you can call. I have the sticker on my windshield. Oh, I report litter bugs all the time. I just love it. I'll get you that number.
I just take for it, I know it's a major issue unless you really see somebody doing it, but.
Well, I see them, I can call right in, they can get that license plate number, and then they get a letter that says you were seen littering on Mount Comfort Road on February the 28th at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, oh, they get that letter.
Right.
I told them I'd testify, but they haven't called me.
Good. Because, I live out there and I don't want it to become, a junky, trashy looking area.
Do you think it's resulted partly of the road construction going on?
I guess it has been because of all that construction. It's been kind of a mess, and maybe after all that's gone, maybe things will settle down. But this is way past the construction there.
Oh.
After you get to Rupel Road, it's past, between Clyber Creek and Bridgeport. Yeah.
The amount of traffic, obviously, in the last, I'm showing my age a little bit, but those of us that remember Rupel, the amount of traffic that is running up and down that road now is so dramatically higher than it was even 10 years ago. So it's obviously that much more of an issue, and it's becoming closer to an artery. I mean, it is caking more and more traffic just because that area is developing so. When it used to just all be farmland and pasture. So
Weddington's at
we'll have
capacity.
to look at it.
So did you say you might send some folks out there?
No, I will take care of, we'll get it down for extra patrol in the briefing log, which lets all the shifts as they come on know what it is they need to be watching, where we're having issues, what's going on. It's not quite Hill Street Blues, but it's when we meet and make sure our men are up to speed
But I
on
like
what's
to
going on.
imagine that.
Yeah.
You can put a sniper on top of the school there.
So, yeah, we will take care of that. And on the other issue with Cleveland, that actually was on there this morning. We are still watching that and dealing with it, so we'll continue.
Someone put a.
And don't hesitate to call us.
Okay.
So,
Don't hesitate to call us.
Yeah.
What's the story with the road? We said November.
We got an update on that today from Chris. He said it's the snow and the rain, it's saturated the gravel,
Horse
it's.
poo. I used to be in the business. So-
You ask and I'm giving you the
Okay,
answer.
yeah.
We did have a resident from out there who asked and we got an answer back that they're doing the very best they can. They need the gravel and all to dry out a little bit. Monday they're supposed to get back with it, isn't that what he said on that email? Needed to be 50 degrees to give it a smoother ride and to make the ground work better. So they're on it and they're trying to get that going.
The complaint I have, because I know you don't move anybody unless you put it in the contract. Now they're sticking signs for 15 miles per hour.
That was my question. There's 15 and 20.
And you get in there and somebody's had a ticket recently, he's doing 15 miles an hour and there's no workers in sight. And if you do see workers, you might see two of them. They're past one lane beyond the cones working on the sidewalk. They aren't even on the street. And it's getting ridiculous to drive a mile. It gets aggravating,
That's on that's
Mount-
the same
yeah,
place that
yeah.
we're talking, the same area?
Yeah, it starts at Rupel Mount Comfort going east. And
So
they've
you're
got
saying you need
15 mile per hour
more
one side.
city, you need more presence out there?
No, what we need to do is have that 15 mile per hour bent and thrown away. It's just way too slow. I can see it when you have a road crew and you're laying stuff, but when you got two guys working on a sidewalk, It's kind of ridiculous. It used to be that it would say when present, when workers present. All it does now is it just threatens you that, you know, it'll double the fine, but
Well, that was my question, because I saw the 15, and I just noticed that today. But then there's 20, so I don't know, is it 20 or 15? That was
Maybe that's something
an issue.
What color are the signs?
orange for the 15 and standard for the
Right.
20, I believe.
The yellow signs that you're talking about are the orange. As a general rule, those are recommended speeds, whereas the white regular speed limit signs are the posted speed limits. Now, there's some exceptions in that, and obviously this is an issue that's how they post those are by pretty strict standards, and it is obviously for the safety of those workers that are out there. And there's no doubt that it does slow traffic down, and it's obviously frustrating, particularly with traffic's thicker out there. But I don't personally know of anything we can do other than continue to make sure we protect those workers that are trying to finish the roadway. It's just gonna be inconvenient.
Did you have
The council?
Yeah.
Okay. The Fayetteville Council of Neighborhoods has been reaching out to all the neighborhoods in the city in terms of trying to redefine ourselves, and we're trying to go in a different direction. We're trying to be more of an advocate for our neighborhoods. But the problem is that a lot of neighborhoods are not showing up, so I'd encourage each of you to come to Fayetteville Council of Neighborhoods. We meet the last Thursday of every month at 6 o'clock upstairs. And we really need to hear from, since if we're going to be an advocate, if the council is going to be an advocate for the neighborhoods, we really need to hear from all the neighborhoods what the concerns and issues are. And we are working on a survey that we're going to be sending out to each one of the neighborhood associations, and hopefully, well, we're working on a draft of that, and we'll be talking about that at the next meeting. We'll get that out here in the next month. But we do want to hear from everyone to see what would you like to see in your in FCON, Federal Council of Neighborhoods. What would you like to see? How do you see us as an advocate, and how we can help support and be an advocate for the neighborhoods? So when you get that survey, if you would fill that out and get it back into us, and we really, really encourage you to come and be a part of FCON and to share your information, the issues and concerns that you have in your neighborhood, the experience that you had, because it might be an issue that somebody else has had, and we could probably share information with each other to try to solve the problems as well. So I'd just like to encourage each one of you to come and join us. And if you haven't registered your neighborhood, that's fine as well. Come and we'll help you do that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I agree, it's really a good group. What other neighborhood updates or questions or observations or?
A general comment.
Yeah.
In the recent storms, I think the city of Fayetteville did its usual great job of taking care of our neighborhood. I really do. Now, they weren't out there immediately, but hey, this isn't Buffalo, New York.
Right.
This is Fayetteville,
Right.
Arkansas. And given the equipment the city has, given the staffing that they have, I think they did a great job.
Good to know. Yeah, I thought I was impressed. I mean, it's 2 feet of snow, record snow. The type of snow that normally you hear on the ski reports, you know.
Not if they have the warnings.
Not around here.
Well, and I'll report that there wasn't favoritism exhibited by the city, because I live next door to a councilwoman, and our street wasn't the first one plowed.
Oh, there you go.
You got your streets plowed.
You asked for it, but we didn't do it.
Didn't happen.
So can we use motorized snow machines on the trails during snow? Or cross-country skis?
Yeah.
Like I could do that.
Well, if we keep having 2 feet of snow, I think that lots of things would change.
The winter
Lots of
wonderland
things
of
would
the
change.
beach.
All right, well, tomorrow night, the city will hear the Streamside Protection Ordinance for its third and final reading. So please come, speak up. If you have questions, you can still contact me, or you can contact Karen Minkle. contact Rhonda, contact the rest of the council, we can try to answer your questions, but I would say we're going to have a significant discussion tomorrow evening, so keep that in mind. It's the only item on business, and we have a consent list, and then just this as the unfinished business, so hope that, that you'll speak up, so.
Can I talk about that now?
You have a question? Yes.
Yeah, a few things about it.
Okay.
Is this how you, this is not gonna come to this meeting? Is this how
You're
you
welcome
do
to
it?
ask. Go ahead and go for it.
Okay.
Glad you're here.
I serve as the Pyrite Street Director for the Crystal Springs Homeowners Association.
The what?
The Crystal Springs Homeowners Association.
But what director?
Oh, Pyrite Street Director.
Okay.
Our neighborhood's divided up into.
Oh, the Pyrite Street. Okay, got it.
And on our street, we have 22 houses that whose backyard borders a drainage ditch. I don't believe it's a named stream. It does flow into Claver Creek eventually. All of these houses, including mine, speaking as a homeowner and for the neighborhood, we are all within the 50 feet zone. And that's what's concerning a lot of people, is that, you know, I haven't spoken to anyone in the neighborhood who disagrees with the intent of this ordinance at all. I mean, we all want to protect the water quality, and we all understand what we're trying to do. Most people are not happy about giving up their entire yard. And I've got a couple of printouts here from Google Earth just to kind of so you can see the character of the neighborhood and the stream that we're talking about. And y'all can pass this around. I'm sorry, this is all I really had time to throw together.
Okay. But I want to make sure you understand, I do not agree that this idea of giving up your entire yard.
Okay.
I don't think that that's true.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can step out my back door onto my patio and be within 50 feet of that concrete ditch back there. Now, that says that other than what I've got in place right now, I can never change that.
So the way it's written is that all existing uses can continue. And this is about land use. And just like you live in a RSF4 subdivision, that means that no one can come in there and build an apartment complex next door to you. And that, because in the city code has a list of land uses that are allowed in RSF4. That's a type of land use designation. The Streamside Protection Ordinance, what it does is establish in these areas certain land uses that are intended to protect the water quality.
Right.
And as someone who lives along there, whether you own property or rent or either way, that these land uses would be one recommended or one prohibited in order to protect the water quality as a whole. Not just water quality, but the stream banks along which you live.
Right.
And so, because as taxpayers, if your banks erode, or if other people's banks erode, so if an individual's bank erodes, that person calls the city and asks the city to repair it. And that costs all of us money.
Right.
And so, one, it costs the community money, but it also costs your neighbor their bank. Because if you remove vegetation along the bank, that causes the banks upstream and downstream from you to erode more quickly as well.
Well, let me
And
show
that
you.
infringes on their rights.
This is a picture of our stream bank.
Right.
There's also a problem,
And
you know,
so-
I just realized our neighborhood in Fort, that
So this is
At the end of
exactly
Newport,
the
there's a
type of
creek.
thing that we're trying not to
Clever
happen.
Creek Fort.
So this, what he's showing here is a trapezoidal ditch that someone's put into a drainage area. And this type of thing increases the velocity of the water. It doesn't filter. There's no filtration along here, and it is receiving a lot of water. And there's nothing taking up those nutrients. So downstream from this, all those people that also live downstream, they are having to deal with that, whether it's because their banks are eroding more because of the increased velocity, or because we're all having to treat the water more.
Right, but
And so this right here, so the increased vegetation along here would reduce the amount of nutrient flowing from both sides of this area, and there's a lot.
Fertilizer,
Fertilizer, dog manure,
so, but you're
sediment.
talking about 35 to 50 foot backyards that are right on it.
And we're talking about 100 acres of drainage. And water doesn't flow perpendicular to a river, it flows downhill. So wherever the downward slope is, that's where it's flowing. But it's not just on the surface.
I'm just asking,
soaking through.
what I'm saying is real common sense. I was trying to keep it short so we could get it out there. These people, and I just realized that we have them in my neighborhood now. If they don't fertilize that, then their grandchildren come over and you say, oh, don't step on that because that'll cut you. That one right there will give you a burn. That one will give you poison ivy. You know, you see where I'm going? It's a lawn. It's residential. They move their
Right, and you can maintain that.
Yeah.
Everything
If fertilizer is fine,
everything that is there now.
But we are asked to mow our grass on the highest setting.
What?
We are asked to mow our grass on the highest setting of the lawnmower. Right.
So everything that is there now can continue.
Well, let me step back just for a second, and I'm not trying to be picky. You know, earlier Matt said in an urban setting, right? Sometimes for the city, the only place they can put a trail is right next to a stream, and when they're going to do that, they're going to follow the best practices, right? Well, Charles and I have a 1/4 acre of land in the city, and the only place we can add onto our house is our backyard. We don't have any other choice. You know, if I had 100 acres of land, when you talk about 100 acres of drainage, I would be happy to give you 50 feet. You know, I'd give you 100 feet, if that's what you wanted. But the people in our neighborhood and myself too, you know, when I walk out my back door, I'm in that riparian zone. And there's other uses, you know.
I think that's cool. I would be so excited if I had property right along the stream and within a riparian zone. I would be honored and excited about it. And actually I do. I do. And the other part is there are studies not far north of us where properties that are along a stream, and they did a comparison of properties with riparian vegetation and without riparian vegetation. And the ones that were riparian vegetation, where there was shrubs and trees, sold for $1,600 more dollars per property. People were willing to pay $1,600 more for that property than they were when there was no riparian vegetation on that property. And to me, if you take per property, that's called a contingent valuation method, it's called. And you ask people what they're willing to pay. You show them one image and you show them another image, and they say, I'm willing to pay X amount for this. And they had a few hundred people in their survey, and it was a suburban type area like this one. And so it's hard, so this idea that you're not getting, that you can't maintain the value is not supported.
You can't do the purpose.
And actually it
And you
increases
got
the
us
value.
scared is what it is. Because there's such a forward thrust in this town, you think there's 60,000 people that are heavy green. No, there's 50,000 people raising their families, and the other 10,000 are fighting over schools and green or not green. You know, when you make it a law, an ordinance is a law. It's another, you know, a tax is a tax, a law is a law. Okay? You're scaring people. They're afraid, hey, if I put up one of those, what do you call, swing set deals, gosh, is somebody come over going to slap a $250 fine
Is that
on me?
in the list of, I mean, it's not, that's not a.
It says only one thing is allowed, is a 10 by 10 shed, I believe. And that's
150 square feet,
150
which does
square
include.
Which is, and that's the other thing, this is,
10 by
the thing that this says is, and you think about it, okay, in this space, I can do things that allow water to soak in, okay? That allows keeps the vegetation there. You really want an integrated root system.
Sure.
And when you cover the ground with cement or a roof, that causes a loss in that integrated, twisted up root system that holds the soil in place. and also takes up chemicals.
And I understand all that. I mean, I understand what we're trying to do here, but, you know, I sent you both an email where I worked up some numbers. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but my backyard, if I step out 5 feet from there on forward, it's 85% of it would be affected by this ordinance. If we're not, I won't say taken anymore, affected by this ordinance. If I had 160 acres at a quarter section, golf course, industrial park, you know, big housing development, and I had a stream that bordered the north of it, that's 1% of my land, not 85% of it. So the less a person owns, the more that is affected by this ordinance. And, you know, you said tax earlier. You know, if this was a tax, my gosh, it'd be regressive, horribly regressive. Could you imagine what would happen if we said, all right, property taxes for Fayetteville, if you own 160 acres, we want 1%. If you own a quarter acre, we want 85% of it.
Well, I mean, you can think about it this way too. 51% of this population rents in Fayetteville. To me, that group of people has the right to water quality and pretty streams and connected, and
We have signs to clean it.
and it has to be a connected, integrated system where everyone's working together to protect those streams. And it goes to the rest of the community as well. That's the thing, that we're all affected. We're all affected by the activities in these areas. And as someone who gets to be a part of protecting that area, I would be honored, and I am. I have a drainage ditch that goes around my property, and there's vegetation that goes along there. It's all the roots are holding the. If it didn't, I'd be nervous because that would be eroding back into my land that I do own, and I don't want it to wash down the river. I want to keep that land on which I pay property taxes. I don't want it to erode away, because then I have to pay. Not I, actually, the city then would come in and have to rebuild that. So the rest of us, it all affects us, would have to come in and rebuild that as taxpayers, and so we have to work
It's
together
all about, I
to
keep hearing this
protect those.
I. You know, if anything I learned in a career in the Army, it ain't I, you know?
Well,
And you
Is there
gotta take the
something
city of
specifically you're
60,000
wanting to
people.
do that-
Absolutely. Inside the ordinance, it lists that if we daylight a stream, daylight a pipe stream, then we would go with a 5-foot setback, right? I think that 5-foot setback, or a general grandfathering in of all platted existing subdivisions is what would be fair here.
No, but I said, is there something you want to do?
Oh.
That you're specifically wanting to do?
My-
That this ordinance will
Sure,
present?
I would like to cover my back porch. I don't know if I want to make a sunroom like Charles wants to, but eventually, someday, I have 3 small children. I don't have the money for it now, and I won't for a long time. You know, I'm buying a lot of diapers. That's where all my screen porch money goes right now. But that's what I would like to do. And I understand that the ordinance, I could do 10 feet. I was really wanting to go a little bit further.
You said your back porch?
A patio. It's a patio's also.
You have an existing patio.
I do have a patio, a small.
Did I not read the ordinance to say that you can rebuild on the existing footprint, or you can modify on the existing
That's
footprint?
That's correct, but I would want to make that footprint a little bit larger. It's a small patio that's there now.
Yeah.
I'd want to make it bigger and cover it. That's my long-term.
And did I not read the ordinance to say there's provision for appeal?
And that's what I was gonna say.
10
Coming.
for appeal? Yes, yeah, and I've read that also.
I'm sorry, I used the
Variance.
wrong word, variance.
Right. There seems to be a lot of room in here for the city engineer to have a lot of leeway on what goes which way and what way. And I think that's good that it was written in. But at the same time, I don't know the city engineer. He or she may be a very nice person, but it's not an elected position that doesn't have direct accountability to the voters. And so I would rather see that written into the ordinance. Things for situations like my neighbors and myself. That we don't have to worry about who the next city engineer is going to be and whether or not he doesn't like me or something like that.
You'd rather have him than me. He's an expert. An expert's a good thing.
Aubrey, you had a question?
Well, for these gentlemen, this would address you to ask them, this is the neighborhood in question?
Yes, sir. That on the right-hand side would be Pyrite. You're standing, that's Google Street Views, taken from Crystal Drive. You're looking south down the back of Pyrite Drive right there.
Okay, so this is, you already have an existing set of fences,
Yes, sir.
and they're about what, 20 feet, 15?
Oh, Lord, no.
15 feet from the edge?
That particular house is set back just a little bit further.
Yeah.
If you get to my house, it's 5 feet from the
From the
stream.
fence to the fence?
Mine's a
You all
little
have
farther
fence.
back, but not as far as the one on the corner here.
Well, has the water ever washed under your fence or
No.
anything?
No, sir.
So-
Because that's one other point I wanted to bring up. You can see from this view, at the end of that is a 1 acre stormwater retention pond
Upstream or down?
downstream.
Downstream.
And I believe its purpose, obviously somebody thought this out and they put it in. All the water is coming in, is going into that area where and it sits there for a while. The rain we had last night, it's still there. The water's still there.
Good.
And it's getting, exactly, that's the point, is it starts to filter the pollutants out that may have washed in. And to hold it and to let nature do its thing before we dump it in the Clabber Creek and on into the Illinois River, so on and so forth.
So with this
I don't
is,
see the, where's the detention? This
It's
here?
kind of hard to tell. No, that's hoping. If you look, this is my house right here. This is the ditch.
Oh,
And
this,
right
okay, I
here,
see.
yeah, and if you come on down here, you'll get into Clabber Creek.
Thank you.
And,
so.
Go ahead, I'm
this-
sorry.
If I may, this ordinance is for the future development project. And unfortunately, I see across there, it appears the utilities are already in across the creek right there,
Yes,
across the
sir.
ditch. But this is exactly what the city was allowing on prairie land, where water soaks in. And then people come out and red dirt it and build on it, put streets in it, put pipes for the water for many places. That's what, we can prevent some of that by protecting the streams a little more. At least it won't happen right this close.
And
You agree, you're.
I agree going forward. That
You
is,
don't want your
that's
house that close to the
fantastic.
stream, really.
And I think, you know, if we could say, all right, folks, what you've already got, you know, you're playing by the rules of the game at the time, this is what you got. Going forward,
Yeah, see,
you
I
know,
think.
can we make a 50-foot
Right.
setback rule before anybody's property line starts against a little stream like this?
Your situation to me seems like the perfect fit for the variance process to me. Like, that's why that's built in to me. Because you're part of a development where they pipe the water to a detention pond.
Mhm.
And to me, that's why that variance is in there, for situations to consider this individual situation. So all existing uses can continue. If there comes a time when you do want to expand the footprint, then you'd have to get a building permit anyway.
Sure.
So you'd come in and this would be part of the planning process for that project.
Okay. And I see your point, and I understand that, but I think perhaps this ordinance is a little too broad, that we have to have that variant. And I know we couldn't do every situation in an ordinance, but it's so broad, this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all town. You
So
know,
think about the planning staff. So I heard this at the first council meeting where it says, focus on the landowners who do the wrong thing. Well, okay, but the thing is, you have to, as planning staff, they have to know where to apply the language. Where does this apply? And that's what this says. The council is voting on a point on which to take these things into consideration. So in future planning, if you have a project that you wanted to, you bring that project to the council and you say, hey, not the council, but the planning department say, hey, I have this project. And they say, okay, well, you're inside this stream side protection ordinance, so we need to look at what you're going to be doing and how you're planning it. We need to, we'll need to see if it affects the stormwater drainage and so on. So they take those into consideration. But they don't know where to do that unless we establish an area in which to do that. Because you're in a sensitive area, which you are because you're close to a drainage area. These are considerations to take into account when there are changes in the drainage, which is what you would be doing. You're creating an impervious surface, you're changing the hydrology, and so as a responsible community, we need to be looking at how that affects the drainage. But where do you do that from? You do it from this point downstream, and that's what this does. We would establish a point on the river, and from that point downstream, after 100 acres of drainage, okay, these are things to consider when building a new development, having a new drainage, if you're expanding your footprint, it's part of the planning process. And it establishes a list of land uses that say, hey, do this, these aren't good for stream quality, these are okay for stream quality. And as you get further out, you have fewer land uses that affect the stream.
Right, but you said just a minute ago that, you know, we're a prime example for a variance because of the way that our drainage is already constructed with the retention pond and all that. So why not write it into the ordinance? Why not amend it, is my question.
Because it's a good thing to consider everywhere in those areas. So when you are taking into consideration changes in the drainage within sensitive areas, which is where you're located, then it's okay to be looking at the types of land uses in those areas. And when we've engineered in the past these hardscapes, we need to be taking that into consideration in the planning. And this allows that. It says, okay, look at these additional components in the changes in this area. So that's because it's a tool, because we don't have enough staff to be going out all over the city looking at this. But it's a way to say, oh, okay, GIS, looking at the map, we can say, we have technology now to do that, say, okay, from this area downstream, these areas are sensitive.
Do we have the staff to hear a variance for every homeowner that's affected here? 'Cause
well, they wouldn't hear it
people are
unless
gonna
you're
want
gonna
to.
change.
You
The existing
just
land
paid
uses.
$50 million for a resource to use our brains and clean up this stuff that gets in our mouths. And I drink right out of the tap. I don't think there's anything really wrong with the drinking water. Okay, you spent $50 million on this. You're talking to the wrong person. Okay, there are agendas. This council is really, you won't even listen. I can't believe you won't listen to us. You're sitting here right here. What did this guy do?
I think we're having a really good conversation.
Well, it's because he's not raising his voice. He's trying to be diplomatic.
I think
He doesn't
we're
know
very
you,
polite
Sarah.
and kind.
He doesn't know you, though.
Okay.
Tell him
we
your
don't-
credentials
that's
and
the
then.
thing, we
No, but
don't-
I am impressed with the way this guy is not raising his voice.
Yeah, that's what I would like.
really am.
Yeah, you're the guy who's against kids using
No, I'm
firecrackers.
against you shooting
We're
off your
done.
mouth all the
We're
time.
done.
That's what I'm
We're
If
against.
you want to take it outside.
I
We're
can
done.
yell at people if I
Oh,
want.
cut
We're
get
done.
off this army
Yeah.
crap, will you?
Hang on, this is, like I said, I'm not against this ordinance, especially its intent of it.
You have good,
The
I think
intent,
you
we're all
have good
for it.
ideas, and I think, because I'm a sponsor of this ordinance,
Right.
my point of view for this is that it takes into account your situation. I think it addresses the specific situation that you're in.
Okay.
Because of, you're exactly right, the way we used to design drainage, not a good idea, with the pipes and the trapezoidal ditches.
Well, we
and-
can agree to disagree on that point, and that's fine. But one other,
No, it's
that's
great.
all I want to do is be able to explain
I
my
love
point, and that's why I came here
Yeah.
tonight, and thank you for
Glad, I
listening to
hope
me.
you'll come back.
And I'm not mad at anybody. The one other point I wanted to make is this, this stormwater detention pond is a habitat for wildlife, not necessarily the kind of wildlife you want to see in your yard sometimes, mice and rats and snakes and things like that, which we also get hawks and ducks and geese. So, there's offsetting things, but because of the rats and the snakes and my 3 little children, I mow that grass as low as I can. I think I sent you an email story about my 2-year-old trying to pick up a brown snake that I thought was a copperhead from a whole ways away. So after that, I was told and asked to make sure that didn't happen again. So I mow my grass just as low as I can, and I really need to keep doing that. And
It's like all exists, if you're doing that, you can keep it, that's,
right.
What kind of
That's the
grass do you
use.
have?
What
Do you
kind of
have
grass?
Bermuda by any chance?
Well, there's some Bermuda in there, yes.
The reason I ask is because Bermuda responds very well to being cut very short, and it has extremely deep roots. Bermuda has roots that go down 3.5, 4 feet.
Right.
If it's properly taken care of.
Right.
So it's extremely erosion resistant.
Right. Well, and the reason I bring that up is because in the best practices manual, it asks to mow it on the highest setting and things like that, and that's really not practical for them.
Those are recommend, and that's the thing, that's saying, hey, that's the beauty of that tool, and staff worked on that, to provide an educational piece for that zone 2, zone 2. And saying, if you're doing something in this area, then use the best management practices, well, I guess all the zones, zone 1 and 2. So, they say, the staff, it's saying, please try to do these things. Of course, if you've been mowing it for a long time, again, it goes back to this, if the existing use, if that's what you do, then that's what you do. And just keep doing that.
I would like to make a comment, pick up on what Rhonda said a few minutes ago, about she's got this file of a bunch of ordinances from other cities, and they range from 3 pages to 30 pages. Well, the difference is whether the ordinance pretty well addresses principle, or whether it goes into extraordinary detail. And there's a risk going into too much detail, because then jailhouse lawyers start saying, well, this detail isn't in there, therefore I can do it, or...
Well, people try to find loopholes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And
if you go with a principle-oriented statement, then the staff and the city council and the landowner can work from principles rather than specific details. Now, I've written a lot of corporate policy for major corporations, and that was a point we made very firmly. A policy is a broad statement of principle, not of detail. See, procedure picks up on detail,
right.
And procedure is in the realm of the city staff.
Right, but at the same time, you can see my point, though, that we leave it up to the discretion of an unelected person, and that's kind of what's...
Well, there's been there are plenty of times when council members will work with staff and communicate with them, and daily we're communicating with staff, yeah.
Personally, I think you're covered. I've read that ordinance in detail, the proposed ordinance.
Are you the city engineer?
No, but I am an engineer. And I would be comfortable in your position.
Okay.
I just did a little rapid arithmetic here. I live on a corner lot in the morning shadow of the stadium. I'm rather close to downtown. And somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of my lot is not open to free use by me to do anything I want to within the general statutes, because it's setback. Living on a corner lot, I got a side setback and a front setback.
But you knew that when you bought the house.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
That is true.
But
some rules have changed since I bought it.
Right, but you're
new rules.
Right, but your setback hasn't changed.
And that's correct. The setback.
But that's what my neighbors and I. That's our concern is, if we'd known this coming in, maybe we would have bought this house, maybe we wouldn't have. I don't know. I think there's a lot of fear and confusion, and it happens every time something changes, which is why we would be more in favor of spelling some of these things out in the proposal.
I think you've got a good escape clause. I really do.
Yeah, but I wish I didn't have to have the escape clause. I wish it was part of the ordinance. Is my point.
I have only one statement. This has been contentious. There's no question about it. And my question would be, with what we have now, the detention ponds and what have you, I was really impressed with the best management practices that you offered up. These were great suggestions. They did a good job. If you didn't approve the ordinance, would you be with this level of involvement? And I made my point last week that I thought what you're really going to get out of it is minimal in terms of really improving water quality. That's an opinion, but it's a fairly expert opinion. But that's my only question. This is you're coming down to it. Look at it and let it go. But I think somebody ought to keep in mind the best management practices would cover a lot of it. The detention ponds, the way we collect now, are doing a lot of it. And it seems like we're starting to stack rules on top of rules. To me, I don't know. That's all I had to say.
So that goes back to the conversation of, I agree, I think that they put together a great best management practices manual. The question is, in these, that there are some areas are more sensitive than others. It's kind of like the hillside ordinance. You have sloped areas are more
Absolutely,
sensitive than
no
others. And so it's saying, okay, from this area, from this point downstream, the best management will implement the best management practices.
But in reality, from this point downstream, 90% of it is developed. So you have no option on what you can do with it. So you're picking on the ones that are left. Now, a lot of what's there, you can't do anything about. It's already grandfathered in. And that's a concern for me, that as you go along, we may have, it just seems to me that it's kind of muddying everything up. And I don't live near the stream, but the whole government has grown enormously in the last 30, 40 years. And where we used to look at, I started in federal employment in 1962. So I'm way back. And we were really, we weren't much into telling people what to do. We were kind of considered ourselves public servants. And it seemed like the whole thing has evolved and the public's kind of getting left out of we got planning and we've got ideas. It seems to me like the individual is getting left out of it. I don't know as...
We called the list and I didn't find one person who said, and these are mostly older people, who said that they got the letter. We did all 1,300 people on that list.
That's one point I would like to make.
And we had to look up the phone numbers to do it.
Well, the people that I've talked to on the street,
they're supposed to send a letter out to all the 1,300 that are.
This is the first I've heard of it. And one gentleman specifically asked me to ask you to consider tabling this for a little more time for public input, because, I just kind of walked the street. After I got your response and said, yes, your stream is in the protected zone, I just said, hey guys, you might want to be aware of this, And, gosh, 9 times out of 10 it was, what is this thing again? And I know that there's been articles in the paper. Not a lot of people read the paper anymore, I guess. But there's a lot of people who aren't going to know this is effective until they try to build something.
They sent out the letters, and I don't know, it may or may not have received them. I can tell you though that we've had workshops we've had public workshops, we've had people here two or three times, for sure twice, to talk about it. It's been on at the EAC twice, it was at the Planning Commission 3 times, and they passed it 7-2. Now it's been at the council 3 times.
Nobody knew
Even
the
if you
finished
didn't get
product
the
was.
letter, we've taken more time with this than any other project I've been involved with.
And a lot of hard work.
Which is really good, I think. I think
it needs a lot of time. And I know there's been an effort made to inform the public. I'm not saying that you've tried to be a secret about it or anything like that, but, maybe I'm just busy and I didn't notice it, but until I read the article about the second reading in the paper, first I heard of it. And that's maybe I need to be a little bit more involved citizen or something.
Come to Ward 4.
I'm here, aren't I? But anyway, I was asked to pass it on, and I'll shut up now because I've kind of dominated this.
For the sake of time, I'm going to take Rhonda.
Well, I just want to say that I have listened very carefully, Mr. Lawler, to every single email, every single phone call, every single one. And I am inclined to vote for this tomorrow night, and I'm going to tell you all why, and I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk tomorrow night, but I do not believe, after all my studying, listening, reading, talking to lawyers, talking to people, that this is a taking. I believe it is a land use issue. I do not believe that the impact of it is going to be so serious that folks won't have an opportunity to do what they want to do with their land in most cases. I really believe that it's been written in such a way that people will be able to do. I believe you will have an opportunity what you want to do in property. I believe that. And the third thing I guess I would say is that when we talk about a point and start looking forward, we have, like Sarah said, it's the first time I've heard Sarah give that presentation tonight, which is why I was listening carefully. I've not met with Sarah, I've not sat and listened to her talk like she did tonight. I've read everything. But I think when we talk about a point in time and looking forward, that's how we live as a community. That's how we make our community better, greater. That's how Fayetteville becomes even a better city than it is now. And I'm going to vote for this tomorrow night, I believe, unless something happens between now and tomorrow night. I'll still read every email that comes my way. I hate it that people are upset about it. But I do believe that this is gonna be very good for our community, and, so I just wanted to speak since I was, since it sounded like someone at least here thinks I'm not listening.
I was cut off because I wanted to say,
I don't wanna stir that
I wanted
up
to
again,
say
but I
something a
just
little more
wanna say,
benign, but, you know.
Yeah, I understand, and I've tried to listen to you very carefully too, and everybody equally, so I think it's wonderful that we had a better
I've read it
crowd
over and
here
over,
tonight.
everybody's complimenting you
We've had a-
for writing back to the Tea Party folks. I see it
Well,
100
I
times
think
a
we
day.
have so much to be proud of, Matt. Thank you for coming tonight and giving up your evening away from your family. We have a great staff that does that sort of thing to help us get the word out to people. And thank you, some of you who came tonight and haven't been before. I hope you'll come. We've got some other things coming up too. We all need to work together to get, and appreciate your respectful and kind way of talking and giving us more things to think about. Very, very
Tell your
much.
neighbors to come out
Very much.
tomorrow night.
I think we're gonna have a crowd.
It went to 10 o'clock on the second reading.
Yes,
A
I was
question.
there for the whole thing.
If this passes tomorrow night, when is it effective?
30 days. Ordinances go into effect 30 days after they pass.
Is that automatic, or can that time period be changed?
I think it's beyond Fayetteville. I think that's how an aldermanic code works, which is in the state of Arkansas.
State law.
Yeah, but we can check on that. But I'll check on it, yes.
Well, let me say this. I'm in favor, more now than ever before, of less government. And I was actually afraid to say anything, afraid that whatever I might say may prejudice city government, I'll put that in quotation marks, against anything I may try to do in the future. I'm not ordinarily paranoid, but I am concerned. I'm not being very articulate either, but I am nervous as all get out about this. I moved here in December of 2009, closed on that house on October 30th, knew nothing about this, do not recall having received any letter on this subject. Didn't realize that concrete-lined lagoon, because there's sufficient vegetation at the exit end of that concrete ditch, that there's always water in that ditch. And until the city went in and cleaned out most of the cattails, that ditch was almost totally grown over. They did that this year. But I would not have bought that house had I known that this ordinance was going to be even considered. I might have bought one across the street, and I probably could have waited a couple more months. I have a daughter who lives down the street, granddaughters, that's why we moved up here. But I guess, again, what I'm really trying to say is I think this thing goes farther than it should, particularly with existing uses, or maybe not so much existing uses, but logical extensions of existing uses. I promised my wife a back porch sunroom when we sold the house in El Dorado. I'm slow at spending money, and so we have not done that yet. And now, it appears that in order to do so, I'm going to have to spend an enormous amount of time and effort to obtain a variance to this ordinance so that I can extend my existing patio 4 feet farther, put a roof on it, and put windows in it. I'm going to continue to cut my grass just like he does. Now, the neighbor to the north of me doesn't, so it's a jungle from his fence down to that ditch. But the rest of us on both sides of that particular location, I think, keep our grass cut, because I did kill copperhead in my backyard. And I don't like to prevent my kids from playing out there, but you can't watch them every second. And they're young and they're curious, like his kid.
Maybe just try to pet it.
So please come out tomorrow night and speak up, or write letters, or speak up, and I appreciate you coming tonight. And I think that I'm looking forward to the discussion, and it's been an interesting journey, and we're being people from outside of our watersheds, or I guess in the watersheds, so the White and the Illinois River watersheds are complementing this, because this affects them as well. So this goes beyond just keep in mind that water touches all of us, and this is about the whole community. So
I just have one question.
One question, and then we're going to close.
Okay. How did you come up with the 50 feet? Why not 10 feet? How come you come up with the 50 feet on the other side?
I don't know, I think Karen will give that presentation again, but at the council meeting, but we looked at, it was the Environmental Action Committee reviewed ordinances from all over the country. That was one part, and then also looking at scientific literature and looking at the effects of different, so there's studies that look at the implication, the actual data effects of filtration and also bank stability of different amounts of feet. Some cities have 300-foot buffers all the way to 100 to 25, and the thing that the city staff then thought would be the best, and I agreed, and so did Lionel, was that 50 would be the best, because there are multiple studies that show that's the width that has the most significant, the statistically significant reduction of nitrogen from the stream. So it's an uptake of nutrient coming from the watershed. And so that was how that came about, and also it was within the range of what other cities that have done this and have had it for a while have used, significantly less than those actually. So that's how that, and I'll ask her to present that again. So, and then I think.
Say one more word to the folks that are so worried about it. I grew up hunting and fishing. Too old to do much of it now. I just come to meetings like this and try to protect the environment, natural resources on which other living things share with us. So this isn't just about the little bit of what it will do on changing the chemical makeup of the water. It's also about not silting in streams that are downstream, where the smallmouth bass, our prize in Arkansas, have to have clean gravel to reproduce, and the rock bass. It's about so many things that this will help prevent downstream. In your case, I think Illinois River. In my case, White River to Beaver Lake. And Lake Tenkiller, I lived 2 years in Tahlequah, and that part of the river was beautiful in the 1960s. And you could see the bottom all year round. And in recent years, primarily because of the silt from Fayetteville, I'm sure, going down to subdivisions like yours being built in these areas. That river's cloudy much of the time, but we're not wrong still.
Well, I think that's more runoff from poultry litter that's caused algae blooms.
Well, algae
So that's.
It's a big hole where it
There's
doesn't
lots of causes of pollution, and all of those are. So thank you for coming to Ward 4 City Council, Ward 4 Council meeting, and come to the City Council meeting tomorrow night. So have a good night, thank you, we're adjourned.
We've been